What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbein, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, it's quarterback chaos in the black and gold right now. We're talking Alabama's pro day and how the Pittsburgh Steelers made a massive impact down there. Their presence was felt even before the players hit the field. Is Jalen Milroe a name to watch? We'll dive into that. Plus, the Minnesota Vikings have opened the door for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers to finally get a deal done. Well, I have some information on where that stands and how things may or may not have changed between Pittsburgh and Aaron Rodgers. Are they ready to move on? That's what Jerry Dulac is presenting to all of us in his weekly reporting. And then, you got to toss in a George Pickens trade rumor now and then, and we'll dive into that as well. It's a beautiful one out here in the Berg, 80 degrees today, sunny and looking good. How you feel, my friend?
I'm feeling like I want to go golfing. Now, you fortunately will have your golf clubs because you had the foresight to bring them in before the rain came. So I'm feeling thankful that you were able to secure the golf set before we got on the show today.
Yeah, it was about 3:50. I usually jump on here about 3:50 and sat down, turned the lights on. We were good to go. And I heard the gust of wind right at the window right here. And just, and I went, nope, not happening. They are outside, and that is not where they are staying. So we barely made it, but we made it. And that's okay, because I will take the sacrifice of not being prepared over golf clubs literally 10 times out of 10. Love all you guys, but you understand the pain. You understand where we're at here. Let's talk Pittsburgh Steelers football. We'll start with the trade rumor, get that one out of the way. Then we'll dive into all the quarterback situations and where everything is. First, I want to give a quick shout out to all of our members who called into the call-in show today. It was awesome. If you are not a member, you could hit this link here or in the description below and become one and call into the AST call-in show every single Wednesday. It was a blast as always. So I appreciate all of you guys. Let's talk some George Pickens. He posted a tweet. It wasn't a tweet. It was an Instagram story yesterday, which Cordell Patterson would have lost his mind over if he was Tom Brady, saying, you're going to start a rumor on an Instagram story? You're not even going to give me a real post to start this rumor with? Of him and good old Tom Brady, which at first just looks like a picture of George Pickens and Tom Brady. And if I had a picture of me and Tom Brady, you best believe that it would be online, that social media would know that I own a picture of me standing next to Tom Brady. But everybody online, every single person wanted to remind us that Tom Brady is no longer just former NFL quarterback Tom Brady, that Tom Brady is no longer just future Hall of Famer, greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. He's minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, who need a wide receiver, Tom Brady. And while that may mean nothing, everybody sure as hell took it and ran and said it means everything. I'll give you my opinion on the matter right now. It's very simple. When it comes to George Pickens, Tom Brady, and the photo in front of us here, it is nothing more than just George Pickens, Tom Brady, and a dope photo. That is all this is. That is all it will be. And if we're going to be honest, it's not a trade anything. I mean, I think George Pickens most likely does get traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers, but at the same time, I don't view this as a hint to say, hey, I want to go to Vegas where Geno Smith's the quarterback and you guys stink and Jacoby Myers would be the guy. And maybe he's thinking no income tax, but I don't have the sense that this is a get me to Vegas type of situation. It just doesn't feel like that's what George Pickens and Tom Brady and a picture of the two mean. It just, in my eyes, just kind of feels like this is a picture of George Pickens and Tom Brady. We could pull it down. And then I'm going to be honest. I think it was a reach to start the rumors, but they got started real fast. Once again, just look at this as a picture. I fully believe that George Pickens ends up on a different roster, most likely by the end of the year. But I don't think it's Vegas. Vegas makes absolutely no sense. And for multiple reasons, like George isn't making a boatload of money. He's going to at some point. But I mean, if that's it, if it's the income tax, I get that. I don't look at Vegas as an opportunity for any wide receiver. There are other names out there. New England's looking for a wide receiver. They got a damn good quarterback who could use some wide receiver help. George might be thinking of them. Cam Ward's going to go to Tennessee. They could use a wide receiver. I mean, you could go to a number of teams that need wide receiver help right now who have better quarterback situations than the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, I just think it was a cool picture. Do you have a different thought on the matter?
I don't know why everybody's thinking that this is George Pickens saying that he wants to go to Vegas. I kind of said that you could see this as George Pickens saying, as long as we're reaching for 40-plus-year-old quarterbacks, Tom probably still got a little bit left in the arm. I don't know. But no, it's literally, it's a picture. It's a picture of Tom Brady. Now, if he posted a picture of Stan Kroenke, who is the owner of the LA Rams, then yeah, you probably would take a little bit more notice, because who posts pictures of Stan Kroenke? But it's the GOAT. It's Tom Brady. So I didn't read into it as much as everybody else did.
No, it's a cool picture of George Pickens and Tom Brady, and I think that's where we're at. All right. Let's move from one rumor to the next. This one actually is true. Sources have confirmed to me, and probably any other person who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers or the national media, that Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and Tom Arth, quarterbacks coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, had a very interesting very interesting dinner last night in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And they brought Jalen Milroe, quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide, out to just get a deeper look. Something that the Pittsburgh Steelers do quite often, that this is not new, and they typically go for the guys with the big names that they have some interest in, whether it's early in the draft or middle of the draft. Usually those late round guys don't get dinner, but Jalen Milroe is viewed as a guy that could go anywhere from the Steelers pick at 21 to the third round, and there really is all in between. Nobody has any idea where Jalen Milroe is going to fall, and the way the quarterback class is changing at this point, it would not surprise me if Jalen Milroe went in the first round. It wouldn't surprise me if 6 quarterbacks went in the first round. The way this thing is heating up, and the amount of quarterbacks that are starting to get that, well, he is pretty good status, is growing by the second. Jalen Milroe's a name. You could take this show back 2 months, and I said Jalen Milroe is a name to watch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why? Because Mike Tomlin loves the fact that Jalen Milroe is drawing comparisons to Lamar Jackson. And that's enough for him. I'm not saying it's the best opportunity. I'm not saying it's the right call. I'm saying in Mike Tomlin's eyes, Jalen Milroe looks real familiar. So familiar that he plays him twice a year and that he wins the AFC North most times since he's come into the league. Jalen Milroe is certainly on the Steelers' radar. I was told in Indianapolis that he is very high on their radar, but names like Jackson Dart, Will Howard, possibly Tyler Shuck are also very high on that radar. But he makes, sense. He does. He makes sense. If we're going to be very honest, Jalen Milroe makes sense. There are a lot of people that say this guy can't throw the football. He stinks. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Jalen Milroe is a massive project, a huge, huge risk that you will take in the NFL draft. But the Pittsburgh Steelers sure as hell look like they are a little bit open to taking a risk. And Jalen Milroe on the other side of that risk is the biggest reward by far if it works out. Jalen Milroe is the most raw quarterback in this draft. He is also the most upside quarterback after Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders of the group. He's the guy that if it does work, if it all works, he's Lamar Jackson. If it doesn't work, he stinks. And he is whatever mobile quarterback didn't work out in the NFL. I don't know where he's going to fall. I mean, I look at Jalen Milroe as a risk worth taking if you move back, but the Steelers don't have a history of moving back, and I have a hard time believing that they're going to think about it. But I do know for sure that Jalen Milroe is on their radar right now, is a name to watch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And after running a 4.37 at his pro day, which I was told it was a 4.5. It was a 4.45. That's what I was told. Most people had it, and Alabama said 4.37. I don't know if you guys saw that, but my phone says 4.37. I think he's going to climb up draft boards. I think he's going to be highly considered for a trade back into the first round type of candidate. I'm not going to rule out the possibility that the Steelers don't try to do that. I'm just not. I'm not. They passed up. Think about it like this, okay? Look at the Steelers' trends. And again, it doesn't have to be, do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Like, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with trading back in for Jalen Milroe. If you want to trade back for Jalen Milroe, there's a conversation to be had. But they're not going to pass up on the next Lamar Jackson because they didn't pass up on the next Dan Marino, even though it didn't work out. And they're determined to get this thing right, which means that they're not taking the same old boring, we're the Steelers, we don't do anything exciting approach that they've done for the last 25 years. Instead, they could look at it and say, this is a guy that's got a ton of potential. Maybe we make a move for him. Maybe he's the dude that with the first pick in the second round, we make a phone call to Tennessee and we say, here's George Pickens. We say, here's a couple of draft picks. Let's go get our quarterback. And that quarterback could be Jalen Milroe. I think he's on their radar. I wouldn't rule out the possibility that the Pittsburgh Steelers do something drastic to get him. I think it makes the most sense to move backwards to get him, if that's what the Steelers are thinking. But I also don't think that the Steelers are going to move backwards because they are not a team that moves backwards historically. They move forwards. They don't move backwards. I got a hard time believing they're going to do that now, that they're going to switch now. What it does seem like is that they're determined to go get a quarterback. Jalen Milroe is a name to watch. I would put him on my draft board. I mean, I'm not going to ask if it's possible that they will, because I think that it is possible that they will. How bad of a decision is it if they do?
Yeah, I mean, them taking him out to dinner is the least surprising turn of events of the entire year of 2025. Anytime Mike Tomlin gets eliminated from the playoffs, he books 2 tickets immediately before he even leaves the building. It's Mobile, Alabama, and it's Tuscaloosa for the pro day. So the fact that they took out not just Milroe, but also several other top prospects from Alabama to a dinner is not surprising. How bad of a decision is it if they use a first-round pick on Jalen Milroe? I think it's a fairly big mistake if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. I understand. You need a quarterback, and you need to find the answer. And if you squint hard enough, you see the potential in Jalen Milroe. But they're in a position right now where they shouldn't be squinting and taking risks on a quarterback that should be a third-round quarterback in the bottom of the first round. So I think that it is just too much risk and not enough substantial talent that is already formed for you to grab onto. Yeah, there is a lot of raw talent there, but there's not enough fully formed. And there's also not a track record of the Steelers being able to make those formations in a quarterback. So if you're on the Steelers, I think it's a little bit too risky to grab Milroe unless he falls down to that third round.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any chance he falls down to the third round, but I agree with you. Yeah, I think the quarterbacks are going to go. Like, the more people I speak to, the more people start saying things like 5 quarterbacks in the first round. That's what the expectation is growing to. Like, Tyler Shuck is almost a lock in the first round, as crazy as that sounds. Jackson Dart is a lock, and is a lock to the point where we may be super undershooting his possibility to land with Pittsburgh, because I've heard rumbles that the New York Giants might say, screw it, we're taking Jackson Dart. That the Las Vegas Raiders might say, screw it, we're taking Jackson Dart. That the New Orleans Saints might trade back in for a late round guy. I think these names are going to fly off the board. That's the only part of this that makes me believe that there's a real possibility the Steelers do something like this. Is names start flying off, start moving. The Pittsburgh Steelers are staring at 21, and Jalen Milroe's there, and he's the best quarterback on the board. They might go, screw it, let's do it. Let's take a risk. Let's try to get our guy and see if it works out for the best, and see if that's the move. And I'm telling you, I think it's a possibility. In my understanding, they're hoping Will Howard falls, and they're hoping Jalen Milroe falls, but they have less of a anticipation that he's going to. What they're looking for is a guy to be there late in the second, in the third round, where they can decide to move up if they want to go get somebody. But if not, they could sit there at the third and they could draft somebody in the third round. Quinn Ewers, but I think they're less high on Quinn Ewers. Will Howard's a big one, but I think Will Howard's going to climb. Jalen Milroe's a big one, but I think Jalen Milroe's going to climb. And then if they find themselves with Jackson Dart presented to them at 21, don't rule it out. Just don't rule it out. I think it is a possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, will they be the starter in 2025? No. The answer is pretty clearly no, because chances are Aaron Rodgers is going to be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming season. The Minnesota Vikings have provided all of us a little bit of an update on that front, and said that they are not interested, at least that's what Tom Pelissero had to report, that they are not interested in Aaron Rodgers currently. Where they stand currently, the Minnesota Vikings are not interested in Aaron Rodgers. So these things come out, phone calls get made, texts, whatever, any form of communication. I'll drive to a house if I have to. I didn't, but I made some phone calls. Nothing has changed. There's literally no change across any front in the whole. Minnesota Vikings have shut the door on Aaron Rodgers, and now everybody starts to believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers window of opportunity is wide open. That this is it. Aaron's now going to make a decision on the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New York Giants, or retirement. We're here. We're on the verge. No. From my understanding, from everything I've been told, this is exactly what it was. The only difference is that the Minnesota Vikings needed to make it public that J.J. McCarthy is their guy where they stand currently. However, things could change. And that is why Tom Pelissero tossed it in his tweet that things can change, because the Vikings wanted it to be known that JJ is their quarterback one today, but he might not be their quarterback one in August. And that is a long ways away. Aaron knew all of this. No new information has come to light. And for anybody sitting around, which it's a lot of the NFL world sitting around saying, this is it. This is the beginning of the end for the Aaron Rodgers saga. I don't think it is. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is any closer today than he was yesterday to making a decision. And I don't think the Vikings going public with any of this is new information for him at all. I'm sure that the Pat McAfee show texted him. I'm sure that somebody in his inner circle has let him know that these public comments have been made. But I don't think he looks at it and goes, oh, that's new. I think him, his agent, his representatives, all of them across the board fully understood what's going on. And the Steelers are fully aware of what's going on and how things are being handled. Rodgers and the Steelers and the Vikings and the Giants have not changed. We are still sitting here. We are still waiting. Ian Rappaport says it could go till the draft. I'm looking at it as just about April 21st, something like there. The day the veterans get back into the building, that is the day that I say the Pittsburgh Steelers are closing the door on Aaron Rodgers. But they have no leverage to push this any faster than that. None. The only leverage they could have is going to sign a Jameis Winston or a Russell Wilson or a Joe Flacco, a name like that. They could go and wait till the draft, but that doesn't change anything. They have made it abundantly clear that Russell Wilson is not their top priority. They have zero leverage in this situation. They have stood strong throughout it all. They are confident and optimistic that they are going to land Aaron Rodgers. That's been the case the entire time. There's been rumbles and talks and reports and rumors flying all over the place about how Aaron Rodgers wants to go to the Vikings, and maybe there's some consideration there, but the Steelers have stuck around the entire time and just said, we know at the end of the day, we didn't give him the best financial offer, but both sides are well aware that if Aaron Rodgers wants to win football games in 2025, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the team he's going to go to. And the entire NFL, and I have spoken to I can't say the entire NFL, but I have spoken to many throughout the NFL, and these are not just fans or reporters or anything. I mean, I've had anonymous GMs, which weren't anonymous, but I have to say they're anonymous, tell me that the Steelers are expected, that the entire NFL expects Aaron Rodgers to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that hasn't changed one bit. I've also heard that the fact that the Steelers have stood strong and said, we're keeping this level of confidence, we're not changing, we're not, giving you whatever you want in this situation, is working in their favor in negotiations. And that there's almost a respect level to it to understand where things are, much like Cam Hayward presented with us yesterday. Now, at the same time, Jerry Dulac has reported that the Steelers are potentially ready to go in a different direction if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign. I took this as such. The Steelers are trying to make it known that while they are waiting this out, they are growing impatient. And I don't think that's a secret, to be honest. But just like the Vikings being all in on J.J. McCarthy, the Steelers had to make some sort of public statement and say, we need it to be known that Aaron Rodgers is our top choice, but the dude is dragging us along for just a little bit too long. And we're starting to get a little irritated by the matter. I don't know what those backup options are. I would guess, this is just a guess, that Jameis Winston's on that list, that a rookie quarterback in the first round is high on that list, that Mason Rudolph's on that list, and Russell Wilson is still in consideration, and he wants to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are open to that, but there have also been names floated out there like Joe Flacco that I know Steelers fans are going to lose their mind over if that were to happen, who, as crazy as it sounds, might hold a little bit of ground over Russell Wilson. Just a slight, tiny bit of ground over Russell Wilson. That's how the Steelers are on Russ, that they are just not in on Russell Wilson, but they look at those two names. But again, that's where it goes with leverage. The Steelers are ready to move on, but they don't have anywhere to go. They have nowhere to go right now. And because of that, Aaron's just looking at it going, go ahead, dude. Go sign Jameis Winston. If I call you in a month, you're still going to sign me because you're not going to want Jameis Winston to be your starting quarterback. If I called you in August, you'd sign me. You sure as hell would sign me because you're not going to want Mason Rudolph or Jameis Winston or third-round pick Quinn Ewers to be your starting quarterback in 2025. They have no leverage, but they are making things public, and that's how I view the Dulac situation. Meanwhile, the Vikings are making it public, and Aaron Rodgers is looking at it going, I don't care, dude. This was the same thing a week ago. Nothing's changed. I get it. I know who J.J. McCarthy is. The second that J.J. walks in the building and he's a little bit underweight, the Vikings are going to call me. I don't see this ending anytime soon. Do you feel differently? Is there a name I missed in these potential replacements that the Steelers could be going after?
No, I think we ran down the list of sufficient, I guess we use that term lightly, sufficient replacements for the Aaron Rodgers saga as the Steelers stand right now. But I think the big thing with this entire situation is if there is one word that you could use to describe Omar Khan, it's patient. He's been patient in a lot of situations, but it's been headlined right now by this Aaron Rodgers saga. But last year with the Brandon Ayuk saga, why were the Steelers the last team in on Brandon Ayuk before he decided to go back to the San Francisco 49ers? Because everybody else got tired of waiting. Omar Khan said, you know what, that's fine. I'll sit here and I'll wait. And eventually it'll be me or it'll be the 49ers. And there will be a decision to be made. And they're hoping that the Steelers end up winning out in that decision. It didn't happen last year, and there's a chance it doesn't happen this year. So that patience might end up biting Omar Khan in the butt for a second consecutive offseason. And while I think what he has done in his I guess, de facto 2.5 years as general manager for the Steelers has been overwhelmingly positive, the quarterback situation is one where you look at it and you say, there's a lot of concerns right here. And if he doesn't have the willingness to walk away from the table, to walk away from Aaron Rodgers, then he has no upper hand. We all know that this is on Aaron Rodgers' time. I should have made a t-shirt about this, the amount of times I've said that we are on Aaron Rodgers' time the past 9 days. Omar Khan has to be willing to walk away from the negotiating table and willing to walk away from Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, the options outside of Rodgers are slim to none. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the free agent crop, it's looking like you're probably better off walking into the draft with Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson as your 1-2, and you're hoping somebody that you draft can start to work up that ladder as time goes on.
I agree. I think the Steelers are learning a very valuable lesson in this situation, and that is you rode the roller coaster too long. I doubt that in Mike Tomlin's tenure, he will ever, which I don't know if he's going to get to the end of another franchise quarterback. That's hard to do, to go through 2 of them, where he's going to look at it and say, dude, I will never hold on to somebody too long again and not allow me to have a backup plan and to change things. And Aaron's doing that. Like, in my opinion, Aaron is completely restructuring the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they have hit a point where this is no longer, we're the Steelers, you want to come to us, let's go win some. And even whether or not it's the biggest name available or not, Russ shows up, he wants to play for the Steelers. I'm ready to go. I'm embracing this. Aaron Rodgers is letting it very well be known, dude, you operate on Aaron Rodgers time. I'm Aaron Rodgers, you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. I get to choose things around here. Not you. I'm the captain now. That's what Aaron Rodgers is saying. And I think it's teaching the Steelers, do not ever get in this situation again. The fact that you are in this situation needs to end immediately, which they are. That's the other part of like drafting a quarterback early, is I think this whole situation has put the Steelers in a place where they are more eager than excited. They are just like, give me a quarterback that is going to be here for 10 years. I'm done waiting. I can't do it anymore. We can't go through another offseason of Aaron Rodgers. I think that's where the Steelers are. And again, I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to force them to make a dumb decision in the NFL draft. I have no idea. What I do know is that this is not ending the way the Steelers wanted it to end. And it has gone on so long that they have to, like me, you, and 15, 20,000 people that are watching this show, okay, are all going to look at it and say, this is annoying. This is lasting too long. What is going on? I could not even imagine being Omar Khan or Mike Tomlin. You know what I mean? You go to bed at night, you're just saying, I might wake up to some Aaron Rodgers news. Omar Khan is probably taking as much caffeine as humanly possible, saying, I can't miss a call because the darkness retreat might end at 2 a.m. We have no idea. And that's where, like, I couldn't imagine being the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, being Omar Khan, but that's, again, they put themselves in this situation, and I think they're learning from it. And I think it could force them to make some dumb decisions, but I do think it's going to force them to make different decisions moving forward. And they are not going to ride the veteran roller coaster any longer after 2025, except for our boy, Mason Rudolph, who will be on the roster probably forever. I hope forever. I hope he retires a Pittsburgh Steeler and then floats off into the sunset. And I've always joked that I think he'd be the perfect candidate for The Bachelor, because he's a former quarterback, good-looking dude, Southern guy, feels like he fits the brand. Feel like he'd do pretty well. So I hope he carries off that dream of mine for him and finishes it in Pittsburgh. All right. I've talked everybody's ear off. That's my spiel for the day. That's my agenda and everything on it. With that said, we're going to finish off the show the same way we do every single day. We're going to answer all of your questions, so make sure you're tossing them in the chat. Super big shout out to our members. Super big shout out to our super chatters. Cannot tell you guys how appreciated you are, especially this time of the year as we're grinding away here at free agency. With that said, I'm going to toss it to you, Nick. What do we got?
Yeah, speaking of our members, shout out to Carl Spackler, who just gifted 5 All Steelers Talk memberships. So if you want to be part of the Wednesday morning call-in shows, now's your chance. Carl, opening up the door for 5 lucky members of the All Steelers Talk Nation.
Carl, this is like the 5th time you've done this, man. Can't tell you how appreciative I am. I really cannot tell you how thankful and grateful I am for you. So thank you very much.
Let's go over to Russell, who says Milroe in the first is similar to Kenny Pickett in the first. Now, let me ask you this. Would it be a better or worse move for the Steelers to take Milroe in the first this year than it was to take KP8 all those years ago?
All
those years ago. 2 years ago.
2 years ago. That's a good question. I think when Kenny came out, there was the pro-ready aspect to it that you told yourself things were going to be good. You know, ceiling was low, floor was high. You can make an argument for it. This is the complete opposite. Jalen Milroe is floor is super low, ceiling is sky high. And I'd rather a sky high ceiling than a super high floor, but they did it backwards. You know, at the time, there was no rush to get a quarterback. You needed a quarterback, but Mitch Trubisky was going to be your guy. Cool. Jalen Milroe comes in here and he sits on the bench for 4 weeks until Deontay Johnson smokes Mitch in the locker room. You probably have a shot that this dude turns out to be just okay. Sounds good. Could get the job done. This year, there is that. There is not that. Now, the second Aaron Rodgers signs a deal, that becomes a possibility. And to be honest with you, there is always going to be an argument for this is a really bad draft pick, but at the same time, if the Steelers needed to take a shot, and you could argue that shot should be next year, but they needed to take a shot. Jalen Milroe's a shot, and I'm not going to look at. I would not be shocked if Jalen Milroe turns out to be good in the NFL. Would not. Do I think it's going to happen? I wouldn't put my money on it, but I would not be shocked if he turns out to be okay. And if you could say our team is in a good enough spot that we feel comfortable the rest of the way with what we've got, okay. I think it's a better move than Kenny Pickett as long as Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers.
Let's go down to our resident bounty hunter, Egyptian Roughneck, who has also gifted 1 All Steelers Talk membership, but he also chimed in on the conversation, wanting to know if you're Omar Khan, the con man, and you had to choose one, who are you taking? Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, or Bo Nix?
Josh Allen. I'm taking Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson's a really close number 2, and Joe Burrow's the best of any of them, but he's injury prone. And to me, that is, you win comeback player of the year twice because of injuries. Risky business. Lamar Jackson's unbelievable, and he's just unbelievable. I think Josh Allen is a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback in Buffalo. That's what he is. He would have been the flawless transition out of Ben Roethlisberger. He's got the arm. He's got the leadership. He's got the mobility. He's a tough punch in the face guy, even though he's always got the perfect smile on, and he's just like the feel good Wyoming kid. Even though he's a Cali boy, but he went to Wyoming. You get what I'm saying here. Mm-hmm. I'm going Josh Allen. It doesn't mean I think he's the best of the group. I just think he fits in perfectly with the Steelers. Lamar Jackson would be number 2. Joe Burrow would be number 3. Bo Nix would be number 4.
If I was the general manager of a football team, I'm going for the guy that I think is going to have the most longevity. And that to me is Joe Burrow. So I'm sticking with Joe Shiesty if I had to pick between these 4.
All right.
Let's go to Cody Silva, who says, what about Curtis Rourke in the 5th round to sit behind Mason?
Yeah, I don't know if the Steelers have any interest in it. I'd be interested to know if they end up at Indiana's Pro Day. And if they do, I doubt they're there for any other reason except for him. So it would be interesting. It would be interesting. I don't think I am the biggest fan of Rourke. I look at him as in the 5th round. To be very honest with you, I think the 3rd round is the way the draft is moving. Tyler Shuck and Jalen Milroe and Will Howard and all these guys that I thought were going to be third, fourth, fifth round guys are now going first, second, third round. I don't know who's going to be left in the fifth round that I'd feel comfortable with to develop. That being said, anybody you pick that you look at as a long-term backup, I'm all about. And I think a fifth round quarterback fits that well. But that's, I think, what the ceiling would be coming in for a guy like Curtis.
Let's go to Chris, who says, guys, the Steelers endured Mark Malone, Bubby Brister, and Duck Hodges as well. Rudolph is stable, well-liked, and I think chemistry counts for something in this conversation.
I agree. I do think chemistry counts when it comes to Mason Rudolph. I don't think the team would be upset if he's their starting quarterback. I also don't think he's their best option as a starting quarterback, but I see the argument for it. I see the okayness in it being a possibility. I agree with all those things. I think he's better than Duck Hodges. I think he's better than Mark Malone, which we had a Mark Malone commenting on the show for like 2-3 years, disappeared forever. Hope he's doing well. Bobby Brister, I think he's better than all those guys. But although, dude, Bobby he should have been it. Should have been the guy. But I don't think he's a long-term starting quarterback. I don't think he wins you a playoff game. I don't think he wins you a Super Bowl. I don't even think he gets you to the playoffs. But I do see the argument to say, screw it, start him for a year. He's beloved in Pittsburgh. Maybe he could do something.
Let's go to Steven, who says, what are the chances that Aaron Rodgers doesn't give an answer until the NFL draft?
I think there's a possibility. I do think there's a possibility. I have personally been told that there is no change in timeline in anything, and that's in a timeline where we don't know the timeline. Like the conversation is, yeah, nothing's changed, nothing's being accelerated, it's all the same timeline. All right, great. What was the timeline? I don't know. That's on Aaron. How did we get here? What do you mean? It's all the same. There's no timeline. We're living in Aaron Rodgers time, man. It can last forever. Forever. Aaron is fully aware that that every day he waits, nothing changes. His value doesn't get any lesser at all. If the Steelers signed Russell Wilson, it would be such a shock. Such a shock. If the Giants signed Russell Wilson, wouldn't be that big of a surprise. Wouldn't be that big of a deal. And everybody would immediately say, oh, now Aaron's coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to show up until August, the Steelers will sign him in August. That's a thing. Somebody will sign Aaron Rodgers. He's well aware of that. This could go past the draft. As crazy as this sounds, this could go past the draft.
Let's go back to Chris, who wants to say, I'm more concerned with GP and the offensive line than the quarterback position.
I don't think George Pickens is around for 2025. I hold true to that. I mean, we were the first site and podcast. I broke the news on this podcast to report that George Pickens and the Steelers were most likely headed for a split in 2025, that they were very open to, quote unquote, moving on from him, and that they were okay with finding a trade for the right price. I think that price is gonna happen. I do think that's gonna happen. I mean, I just do. I don't look at George as a piece that's here by the end of the 2025 season. The O-line concerns me, but the O-line pieces are there. So you just have to see if it works. You can't add anything to it and disrupt it. You just have to put it together, fully acknowledge you're not winning the Super Bowl this year if it doesn't work, and see if it does. Now, if it does work, which is the other side of that coin, which is a 50-50 shot that it does work, you could do anything you want. You could get as far as you want to get because that offensive line could control games. So I agree with both of these things. You could adjust one of them. You can't touch the offensive line. You just got to let it work itself out and see if it does.
Let's go to Lance, who wants to say, why not Aaron Rodgers? He had almost 4,000 yards with less weapons. DK and GP and Pat, I think that's a crazy combo that can break defensive schemes down.
I agree. Aaron Rodgers gives the Pittsburgh Steelers the best opportunity to win in 2025. Hands down, no questions asked. Significant gap between that second option. Significant. But at the same time, it's on Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers are aware of that. Aaron Rodgers is aware of that. The Giants are aware of that. The Steelers are looking at it going, look, we've made an offer. We're protecting ourselves for the future because they have to do that at the same time. Aaron Rodgers could be the guy right now, but they can't figure out next season this season. They have to figure out next season. They're going to keep themselves controlled with an offer, but at the same time, I agree and they agree. Aaron Rodgers gives them the best shot to win right now.
Let's go to Old Faithful Egyptian Roughneck, who says, last one for today, July 22nd. I'm hosting a Madden charity event to help the kids get adopted. Would love for you guys to attend. Plus, that makes you bounty hunter bros.
Yeah, July 22nd, as long as I'm not at training camp, which I don't believe I will be, send me the information. You're a member, so you have that email. Send the information to that email. I'll connect with you. I'll send you my number, and I'll make sure I'm there. Definitely no doubt about it. Anything I could do to help, you let me know.
Let's jump down to Chris again, who says, New England wants a wide receiver badly. Maybe you trade GP to the Pats.
I've mentioned the Pats so many times. I will continue to mention the Patriots so many times. I think it makes too much sense. Way too much sense. Mike Vrabel's had the wide receiver in A.J. Brown, and it worked really, really well. He's got the quarterback in Drake May, so he doesn't need a massive contract at quarterback. Go get George Pickens. Go get him. George Pickens isn't going to cause trouble to Mike Vrabel, dude. He'll tell you to get out. He'll put you on the streets. He doesn't care. He's got enough respect in that building to feel like Mike Tomlin, which makes a massive difference. Massive difference. When you have the confidence that you are not going to lose your job, you can control players the way they need to be controlled in an aspect where they're causing issues and you need to fix it. I think George Pickens to the Patriots makes all the sense in the world. I think the draft capital in the second round makes all the sense in the world. I'm a big George Pickens to the Patriots supporter on both ends because I think all the way around it makes sense for the Patriots and for George Pickens and for Drake May. I'm telling you, end of day one in the NFL draft, that stuff's going to start getting real hot, real fast.
I think this is the perfect time for that little caveat that I always like to throw out. You need a contingency plan in place. And right now, that means you need the NFL draft. So if you trade away Pickens for a second and you draft Luther Burden, maybe that's your contingency plan. But you need it in place, whether it is during the GP trade or before the GP trade. But if you're going to trade him, which, again, massive if in my eyes, personally, you need that contingency plan. I know you disagree, but
if I didn't know what I know, I'd tell you that I don't disagree, but I think the chances are, but I hear you. I do hear you. Your point is spot on. They take a massive step backwards. You trade George Pickens and say, Calvin, bro, come on, dude. You're our wide receiver too for a set, or you go sign. Who's the significance of who's the comparison to Van Jefferson? Who would still be? Who would be that?
Is Braxton Berrios signed yet? I don't.
He is actually.
Oh,
I saw the news on Twitter like a week ago. I don't know who it would be, but
he was a week one free agent signing. Good for Braxton Berrios.
He was. I want to say it was to maybe the Titans. Could be the Patriots. 1-for-1 swap with a second round pick. Right up the Steelers' alley.
Let's go to Grayson, who says, "Hey Nick and Noah, I'm bummed that this is the second week in a row that I forgot to call in for the call-in show. But also, have you heard anything about Troy Fautanu and his recovery from his injury?"
Yeah. Troy, last time I talked to Troy, which was at the end of last season, he said that he's good to go. He was trying to push himself to be back for later in the playoffs, and he will be 100% ready to go by OTAs. So I have not heard any updates since. Obviously, things could change. He's going to be training all offseason, but the last time I spoke to him and he gave me an update, he was in a good spot and he felt really prepared and healthy and like he'd be 100% by the time the Steelers touch the field again in early May.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to Danny, who says, "What do you guys think of the defensive tackle Odomewu? Looks like we may just have signed him."
I'm so glad that you said that name because
I knew that's what you wanted. So
yeah. Wasn't going to happen. Look at that. He's a depth guy. That's all he is at this point. He's a young depth guy. He's 3 years in the league, but I think he's only played like 9 games, started 2. He, spent the last 2 years with the Jaguars. Don't know if if he was drafted or undrafted, but I look at him as a depth piece, a guy to come in here and maybe compete for a roster spot, but he's not going to make much of an impact. Just a camp filler at this point. Those guys, this is the part of the year where all these contracts, nothing's guaranteed. You're getting camp signings that you come in here, and if you cut them before the season, you just put them on the practice squad.
Let's go to Cody Silva, who says, I must have missed this. How do you know that Pickens is gone? I guess obviously share what you can in that situation.
I do not know that Pickens is gone. I do not know that Pickens is gone. I will not say firmly that Pickens is gone. What I will say is I have not heard anything except for the fact that it's most likely that Pickens is not on the roster in 2025. And I'm not the only one who's saying that. You know, you could go to any Steelers insider. I think they've all shared the same sentiment that it's just a much higher chance that George is not on the roster in 2025 than he is. Again, if I'm wrong, it works out better for the Steelers. The Steelers get 2 wide receivers. It works out perfectly for what they're looking to do. But I don't know that I have confidence he's going to play on the last year of his deal. I do know that his price tag is eventually going to hit a point where teams will call because he's a wide receiver, and that happens every single offseason. And I get it. He comes with issues. He comes with some baggage, but like Deebo Samuel just went for what, a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the Steelers are going to get trade value for him. And again, like go look at Jerry Dulac's chat today. You know, when somebody asked, when is George Pickens getting traded? Do you want to know what his answer was? 2025. That's all it was. So it's not, there are a lot of people talking and a lot of things being said. And I could take it right back to late January when I said on here that I was notified that the team is open to some sort of trade if the compensation is right. I don't think that's happened yet, but I think it could. I definitely think it could.
Let's go to Unlimited Moonballs, who says this will be Khan's first quarterback selection in the draft, but shouldn't we have more faith in his plans? Also, looking like Moonballs are limited. I'm going to start this one off. Don't you dare disrespect John Rice Plumlee like that.
Where did John?
Khan's first QB
Oh,
selection.
yeah, you're right.
He brought in John Rice Plumlee last year.
He did sign him as an undrafted QB. That is very, very true. That is very, very true. And look at John Rice Plumlee played an NFL game last season. Okay, as a wide receiver, but he played an NFL game last season. I do trust Omar Khan. I think Omar Khan's a good general manager. I think his plans are good. I don't know for certain that the Steelers are going to draft a quarterback or at least one early enough to be the guy. I think Omar is going to do what's best for the team, but I think he's also going to follow a plan that him, Mike Tomlin, and Art Rooney put together. And I think that because of that, it's Omar, but this is, you know, it's Omar with the twist. And I do trust his plan, man. I think Omar is a good GM, and I think what he's done so far has been good moves for the most part. Some of them are questionable, but for the most part, he's done a lot of good for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go to Eddie the First, who says, all this situation has made me realize is that Ben was a selfish quarterback. Am I wrong to apply the Batman, quote, you die a hero or you live long enough to be the villain logic in this situation? Or did loyalty screw the Steelers?
I think it's both. I don't think Ben's a villain. I don't think I'll ever sit here and say Ben's a villain. What I will say, though, is that Ben not being willing to help Mason Rudolph and making it very known, and then it kind of continuing, and the Steelers being afraid to bring in a quarterback to learn from Ben, it added up to this. You know, it's a lot, but it's a little at the same time. Like you couldn't force him. You know, you could sit there and say, dude, suck it up. We're going to draft Lamar Jackson, but you couldn't force him from trying to ruin that guy's career. And it's not guaranteed that Lamar Jackson's good if he ends up in Pittsburgh and spends a year behind or 2 years behind Ben Roethlisberger. Nobody knows. So I think it's a little bit of both, man. I don't think Ben's a villain. I'll never call Ben a villain. I'm appreciative that I got to cover Ben. I think that was the first like holy shit moment of my NFL career was, you know, one-on-one standing there with Big Ben going, I never thought this was going to happen. And I'll always be thankful for that. But at the same time, when you look at it at a realistic hindsight, 2020 light, the Steelers should have forced his hand and said, you don't have to retire, but we have to have somebody ready to go when you do. And Ben should have said, yeah, I understand that, and kind of rolled with it.
Let's go down to Grayson, who says, hey, Nick and Noah, I have one more for you. I know you said the defensive tackles that were signed were mostly depth pieces, but do you think defensive tackle will still be a main focus for round 1 or 2 of the NFL draft?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think the Steelers are preparing themselves for other situations, but they still don't have a starter to replace Larry Ogunjobi. And if that starter is Keanu Benton, they still don't have anybody to replace Keanu Benton. So yes, I still look at defensive tackle as their top option in the first round, but I wouldn't be surprised about running back. I wouldn't be surprised about wide receiver. I would not be surprised about quarterback. I think all three of them are on the board. I think all three of them are high on their list. But from just, what the Steelers have done, where the Steelers are currently, and what they have said about how they need to reshape this defensive line continuously throughout this offseason, make you believe that defensive tackle is still very, very high on their list.
Let's jump to David, who says, Noah and Nick, I got a question. Since the Bengals got both Jamar and T under insane contracts, does that maybe open the door a bit to re-sign George to some sort of deal?
I don't think so, but it does. It does, open the door, I guess. The door is open. The Steelers have the opportunity to do so. I don't think that's going to happen. The Steelers signing DK Metcalf to a massive deal is the most unheard of thing the Steelers do. That's not a Steelers move. What's even less of a Steelers move is signing two of them. They've never done that. They've never signed two massive wide receiver contracts, like, ever. They spend their money on defense. They spend their money on quarterbacks. They spend their money on other positions. But that's why Mike Wallace got out of town. That's why Emmanuel Sanders got out of town, because Antonio Brown was getting the money there. That's why Hines Ward stuck around. And, you could go through the list of guys that ran through here while Ward was here. Like, the Steelers don't typically hand out two massive wide receiver contracts. I don't think that's going to change. Again, I could be wrong. But I just don't. Just as pure guessing, I don't think it's going to.
Let's jump to Dalton, who says 2 questions. 1, how do I get that awesome shirt that Noah's wearing right now? And 2, what is the chance that the Steelers make a big trade for one of Brock Purdy, or let's circle back to the Trevor Lawrence of it all?
Trevor Lawrence is a no-go. The Steelers made it way too abundantly clear that they didn't trade for Trevor Lawrence, or didn't call about Trevor Lawrence, which it made no sense that they wanted it to be that clear, but they did. They made it that clear. Brock Purdy, I mean, if things go south in San Francisco, maybe. I don't think it's high on their list of priorities. I wouldn't rule it out. I don't think it's on their top 5 list of quarterback options right now. But again, the Steelers are desperate. Teams do crazy things when they're desperate. As for the shirt, glad that you said this, because Spencer Anderson, Mark Caboli, and Dan Moore decided to make fun of me one day because they thought my shirt was dirty. And it wasn't. It's just the shirt. They told me this isn't fashion. Well, I'm still rocking it. Appreciate you, Dalton. You could get it at, I forget what it's called. But it's the place behind, huh?
Oh, no.
Yeah. No, not our website. You could get it at, I think it was the Rally House behind PNC Park and Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium, right on that street back there.
Okay, let's go to Territorio Steeler, who says, hey, Nick and Noah, do you think this is an overreaction to say that the Steelers can't develop a quarterback? Ben and Pickett are the only quarterbacks that we've had to develop in the last 20 years, and one of them did pretty good.
I do think it's an overreaction to say that. I think it's an overreaction because it doesn't have the grounds to stand on. The Steelers had Ben Roethlisberger. They drafted Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett didn't turn out to be great, but Kenny Pickett wasn't supposed to turn out to be great. He wasn't a great quarterback coming into the league. There were a bunch of issues. Everybody pointed out those issues. The Steelers gave him a year and a half to develop under the worst offensive coordinator the NFL has ever seen. Just wouldn't say that Tom Arthur Smith, Mike Sullivan, if he's still around, is the group that can't develop quarterbacks. I wouldn't say that. I do think it's an overreaction. I don't think we have any idea if the Steelers can develop a quarterback or if this new group can develop a quarterback. I do think we're going to find out in the next 2 years, but or 3 years or 4 years, however long it takes to develop them. But I don't look at Kenny Pickett and Big Ben and everybody else that's come in here and say, oh, they can't develop quarterbacks. Like, they gave it one shot. It didn't work out on a guy who's probably going to be a career backup. It doesn't, in my eyes, that's just didn't work out one time, happens all the time.
Let's go to Vic, who says, Nick and Noah, don't you think Mason Rudolph would be a good starter for a young quarterback to learn behind?
Yes and no. Like, yes, I think Mason Rudolph's a true professional, great quarterback to be a number 2, really keeps your room together, really helps out the young guys. I agree with all that. I don't think there's any difference between Mason Rudolph and like an Aaron Rodgers or a Mitch Trubisky when he was here. Like, there are a lot of quarterbacks that are good professionals that are, good bridge quarterbacks. I don't think it really makes a difference. I think if you're looking for a bridge quarterback and still want to win this season, Aaron Rodgers gives you a higher ceiling than Mason Rudolph does.
And let's finish it off with this one. What makes you believe that Rodgers will do any better than Russ behind our awful offensive line?
I don't think I don't think anything. I look at Rodgers and say, you're a better quarterback than Russ, but the offensive line is going to play a massive role into all of this. If the offensive line sucks, the Steelers suck. No matter who their quarterback is, the Steelers suck if their offensive line sucks. Now, the offensive line's in place to play better. That's the thing. Everybody looks at the offensive line and says they suck. They do suck, but the pieces are there for them to not suck and get better and better and better. Is it going to work? We have to find out. But the Steelers did it. They put their they put their group together. It's in place. This is their offensive line. They got to see if it works. Like, that's their only option. That's my only pushback here is it might suck. The Steelers have to find out if it's gonna. They have to find out what pieces they need to replace with other pieces and continue to move in that direction. But I agree with you. If the offensive line sucks, Rodgers is going to suck. Russ would suck. Everybody would suck because that's just how teams play, man. If your offensive line stinks and you don't have an elite, top tier, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, you ain't going to be that good. So that's just the sad truth with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But again, the pieces are there to make it work.
You got 3 sophomores, a junior, and a super senior in Isaac Seumalo. So considering the fact that development is not always linear and also players aren't fully developed when they get to the league, I wouldn't bury the Steelers offensive line just yet. I'm in agreement with you on that one.
Yeah, I agree. Where it goes, we'll see. But again, dude, you just have to see if it works. They put their effort in there. Now does it click? Does it not click? It's like any other player. This is just a group that decides so much for this football team.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow, I'm sure, with plenty new updates as Aaron Rodgers watch continues. Until then, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.